First of all, thank you for joining Career Innovations in today's Job Seekers Q&A session. This session will be recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you ever miss a session or you'd like to review any previous sessions, you can go to our YouTube channel and take a look at our Ask a Recruiter workshops at your leisure. Also, it takes anywhere from 28 to 48 hours to upload the latest ones. We are currently uploading some ones that we had a few days ago, so they may not be up to current to this week or last week, but we are uploading those as quickly as possible. You can ask questions one of two ways. So if you weren't able to submit your question before the workshop, I can unmute your mic and you can verbally ask your question depending on how you logged in. If you entered that audio PIN number, you're able to verbally ask your question. If you did not, say you're dialing in, I think you can do *2 and can unmute your line and you can ask a question. Or if you dialed in but you're logged onto the actual workshop, which means that you're using your cell or your landline, but you're actually logged onto the workshop, but you're not using your speakers, you can actually type the question in the text bar. Just keep in mind, we are covering a lot of material. We do actually cover the questions that were submitted first. They actually have priority. So any questions that you may think of right now, go ahead and type them, because as we close, I'll go ahead and address those questions as well. I want to go ahead and do a quick overview. I do this because when people sign up, they don't know who Career Innovations is, and they don't know who we are, and they don't know who I am. I'm Bridget Baggett. I'm actually the founder of Career Innovations. I'm a recruiter, headhunter, whatever name that you want to give it. I do staffing and recruiting for an executive search firm. We pretty much find different unconventional and innovative ways to find top talent. And my true passion is organizational change. I truly believe that the organization's core values is what attracts top talent and actually retains it. Some of the things that we do offer in addition to our recruiting, we offer HR and job seeker training, which you're attending today. We also do resume writing, career coaching, market research, compensation benchmarking for organizations, as well as referral and retention workshops. Today's quote: the most common way people give up their power, the most common way people give up their power is thinking they don't have any. And that's a lot of that's many times job seekers or people that are looking for a job really don't think they have power, really don't think they have leverage. And I'm here today to tell you that you definitely do have power to pursue not only a job, but the job that you want. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that today as well. Let's go ahead and go to some of the questions that were submitted early. Some of the questions that we received today: what to say in a job interview if you've been laid off from your last job? How to properly discuss pay rate? What's the best day to network? How often should you attend networking events? And is there a good template to help keep track of job applications and resume edits for specific jobs? And another quote I have down here is: a wise man can learn more from a foolish question than a fool can learn from a wise answer. So all these questions are excellent questions, and we're going to dive right in. First question was laid off or fired. And I wanted to touch on both because it may be someone on the line that was not laid off. They were actually involuntarily terminated. So I wanted to address that as well. And it's perfectly fine to use the recession or use that I was laid off for your departure. As the economy is starting to ram up and, people are starting to hire, this is something that employers understand. You will not get too much grief, if any, that you were laid off, because that's the reality. Companies during that time period, not only let people go, they let departments go. They were letting, in some cases, hundreds, if not thousands of their workforce go. They were mass layoffs. So being laid off is nothing that you should be ashamed of. This was something that was a result of a poor economy. So that's nothing that you should have to hide from a potential employer. But also, let's keep things in perspective as well. And we're going to address some of the things that you should talk about and some of the things that, you know, you want to make sure that you're upfront and you're honest. You want to be fully transparent with the employer. And I call this a snowball effect when someone really is not upfront with the employer. And this may be people that may be on the line right here that are currently out of work, but they're giving the impression that they're currently employed. You know, I don't know what that may be you. You know, there are people that were laid off, and they may not have been recently laid off. They may be been laid off in 2013 or sometime last year in 2014. But when they had that resume, when that recruiter or that employer receives that resume, it shows that they're presently there. So that's something that can turn into a small snowball effect. That's why I said you want to be very transparent and honest up front, because things happen and questions are asked and references are checked that may not, you know, correlate with what you're telling them. So you want to make sure that you're going to pretty much clear the air with being transparent if you were laid off, and you want to be very objective about that. You know, so what I mean about that, you want to be as objective and transparent as possible and have this type of approach, because you don't want to have to revisit this issue. This goes for if you were terminated as well. So if you were let go, laid off, or involuntarily terminated, you want to make it very clear. You want to have a very direct answer, which means that you're not dancing around the topic. You're not dancing about what happened, how it happened, the people that were involved. And that actually takes me to my next one. You want to keep it simple. You know, at the same time of being transparent, you want to make sure that you're giving them the answer that is truthful, but will also push you through the process, that you're not going to have to restate or come up with another answer or try to sugarcoat this or forgot what you said. So you also want to let them know that you're applying for the position not because you admire the company or at least have some knowledge of the company, but your skills are transferable and they're relevant to the position that you're applying for. You want to move the conversation to discuss your skill set. You want to focus on the current position, not at a company you no longer work at. That's why I put in here you want to be very objective about this. You know, I wouldn't go into details. I wouldn't go into what your boss did or your coworkers did, or, you know, what you were promised. Well, they said I wasn't going to get laid off, and then, you know, you don't have to give a long, drawn-out reason on why you're currently not there anymore. You need to keep it pretty much direct and focus more on your experience. Don't try to weave in some type of complex story. If anything, that digs you a deeper hole, especially if you were let go involuntarily, if you were fired, pretty much. That digs you a deeper hole if you come up with some type of story with all these animated details. Because what's going to happen now, I'm going to question you about the details. Oh, so who said this? Why do you think they said that? You know, and now we're no longer focusing on the position that I'm actually interviewing you for. The whole conversation is now directed on a place that you're no longer at. So you definitely want to make sure that you're very truthful up front by being very transparent. You want to be very objective with your answers, which means that you don't want to name drop. You don't want to tell a long, drawn-out story. You want to keep it very simple, and you also want to expand on your experience, especially if you've been laid off for quite a bit of time. Most employers are going to want to discuss, what did you do to fill your time? What did you do to keep your skills relevant? This is going to be a question that you're going to have to come up with the answer to. So now that we addressed that you were laid off or you were terminated, what have you been doing for the X amount of months that you haven't been working? This is a good way to start to leverage your experience and your transferable skills and start to steer this conversation to more of a positive, you know, and look at how I can bring value to your organization. You know, and if you have to go back to some of the experiences that you've actually brought to other organizations and how this is something that you've done and your track record and, you know, some of the things and accomplishments that you've done, That's a great way to do it, by trying to build up yourself through your experiences and accomplishments. But all means, by all means, you definitely want to address the problem and move on. And that's pretty much the cut dry answer with that. So I hope that was able to answer that question. The next question that I have was about pay, about salary. And I actually put it, I don't know if you guys are following Career Innovations or actually connected with me on LinkedIn. I put out some great information about negotiating your salary. But this question was how to properly discuss your pay rate. First of all, you want to research the market rate that's already out there. And of course, there's so many tools that you can use to do this, and I'm just going to throw out a couple of them. You can use salary.com, you can use Glassdoor, Indeed, PayScale, Salary Wizard, which I think is the same as salary.com. I think they just changed their URL. But you can use any of these sources to find the quote-unquote market rate. Out of all these, the one I really like, I love PayScale, because it gives you the actual pay from the employers. It gives you, they use some different type of algorithms to calculate how much it would be, including, the demographics, the cost of living, the industry that you're in, the economy. They use different type of factors to calculate this market rate. The other one I like is Glassdoor. The reason why I like Glassdoor, because it's real postings from real people and real employees that work there. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever used Glassdoor even to look for jobs. They give you information about the interviews, about, what the salary looks like. And, to be very upfront, they're blunt. A lot of these past employees or even current employees, even though they're posting anonymously, they're very upfront and blunt about, hey, this company's, great benefits, but, the salary's low. Or great experience, great starter job, but don't look to move up in the company. I mean, some of these posts are definitely real. So you want to definitely check into that. And there really are people that work there that can give you kind of a sense of, what the company's offering, how much people at that company are actually getting paid. Next thing you want to do is you want to include your education versus your experience. And you also want to be realistic with your approach, which means that based on how much the market is paying, the education that you're bringing to the table or lack thereof, or your experience that you're bringing to the table or lack thereof, which means, and when I put that in, because it may be, a position that, hey, you would be paid more if you had a master's, or you would be paid more if you had, 10 years experience versus 5. So these are also things that may not have a quantitative value and can start to get tricky when you try to plug it into a formula. But these are the things that you also have to take in consideration, more so than just the title, because many times when they use these tools to look up positions, they go by title, and they try to match as closely as possible to the responsibilities. But keep in mind, some of these jobs that they create, or some of these jobs that these companies post, really aren't cookie cutter jobs. They may say you're doing this or doing that, or may need this or may need that, and may not fit into the mold of some of these salary calculators. So you want to be mindful of that as well. And at the end of the day, you want to be realistic. Not so much realistic that you can't make what you want, but also consider the other factors that are involved. If you're applying to a small or medium-sized company, of course their pay may not be as competitive as a Fortune 500 company or a Fortune 100 company. In fact, you may be doing the exact same job. And that goes for if you're applying to a startup or to a nonprofit. You want to make sure that you're also being realistic with the companies that you're applying to. Some of these companies don't have the budget to pay market rate. Even though there's a market rate out there, and this is quote unquote consider a competitive salary, there are companies out there that can't be competitive. They just don't have the capital to do so. They can't compete with companies that are willing to pay and have the means to pay, 20, $10,000 to $20,000 above market rate. You also have to consider that as well. I also want you to take a look at the don'ts. When you are negotiating your pay, and if you made it to that point, or even if you haven't made it to that point, you're currently interviewing, money has not been discussed yet. You want to make sure that they're not using your past salary history to dictate what you're going to make at this new position. And many people don't know or don't think that this is something that employers can and continue to do. Not all, but you do have employers out there that do base your past salary history on, well, this person was making this much, we'll give them an extra $5,000 or $10,000 and they should be happy. But they may not know that the whole reason why you were leaving that position is because you weren't being paid competitively. You also want to make that be known as well if you are currently in transition or you're leaving a position because you're not making market rate. So they'll know or have some type of mindset that, okay, she's not making market rate or he's not making market rate. Let's see if we can come to some type of meeting of the minds when it comes to salary. Next thing you don't want to do, you don't want to lie about your past salary or your past history of pay. The reason is first of all, everything now is accessible, even your pay. And if you pitch a number out there that's grossly high, that's very competitive, this may intrigue an employer to investigate, okay, is this person really making, $20,000 or $30,000 more than what we can even offer them? So you want to make sure that you're not going to lie about your past history, even if it's $10,000 or $15,000. Why? Because I actually worked with an employer, and I was looking for, this time we're looking for director of sales, VP of sales, and it was a base pay. It's a substantial amount. It was a six-figure position. And the person that I interviewed said they were making, I want to say, almost 3 times the amount that what the base pay plus commission was. Realistically, they could have, because it was an uncapped commission. And what they were selling weren't widget. They were high volume, high ticket items. So it could happen, not to say it didn't or he was lying. But when the employer did ask, and I can tell you this, the employer did ask to see their most recent pay stub. They asked to see their W-2s. And some people say, was that legal? I mean, it was a private company. They weren't asking anything that was in a protected class or trying to discriminate. They just wanted to make sure that, hey, if you're making this amount, great. We can see if we can negotiate something to match it, but we first want to verify if you're even making this. And I can tell you, person fell off the face of the earth after they asked to see their W-2s. So I don't know if the person got kind of offended about that and said, you know what, I'm not going to disclose this information. Hey, I understand that too, but I also understand the business part that that's what it is. This is business. Don't take it personal, but hey, if we're going to stick our neck out there and give you this substantial amount of money, we want to verify that you're making this type of money and you're as good as you say you are. So I understand both parties, but be prepared. If you're going to pitch something very high, prove it. Because many employers are asking for you to prove it. After recovering from the economy, many employers don't have money to throw down the toilet or flush down the toilet. They want to know that they're going to make a wise investment. So you don't want to lie about your past history. That's just something. I'm off my soapbox now, but that was a story I did want to tell about. I was working with a candidate that I don't know if they were embellishing their salary or not, but they definitely did not want to come with proof to verify they were making that much. Another thing that you want to not do or don't do is leave other options off the table. And many people walk away thinking that salary only means dollars. If you're in a situation where or you're networking or interviewing or even have an offer on the table with a company that can't meet your salary demands, Look at other options that you can actually pursue that can probably compensate for money. You know, and I thought of some things that I've actually seen that employers are willing and able to have wiggle room with. You know, this can be your compensation and benefits package. This can be able to telecommute. You know, I had some people that were willing to take a pay cut to be able to work from home. And I don't know if you're sitting here thinking like, you know what, I probably would, you know, take $10,000 or $15,000 less if I didn't have to get my car and make a, you know, 45-minute commute every day. You know, so these were some of the things that they were able to use to leverage and still negotiate their salary. Others was vacation time. Hey, if you can't give me this, hey, can I have an extra week in vacation? Now, at this point, anything's fair game. You want to make sure that you can bring it up, and it's something that, again, is realistic for the company, especially, you know, telecommuting may not be feasible or may not be actually practical for every company if you're working with sensitive information. So you want to make sure the options are going to be flexible and reasonable for both parties, but why not bring other things to the table besides salary? Besides actual money, because some companies aren't able to do it, but they will get creative in helping you come on board if it's not salary. Another thing I want to tell you is also make sure that you're verifying your research. So some of the websites I gave you, some of the things that I gave you to do the market rate research, make sure that you're verifying this to be true. The best part is if you actually know someone that you can actually talk to that works at the company that can give you kind of a ballpark figure, you know, without actually giving you their salary, but can give you the ballpark figure on how much this company usually brings people in at. So you'll have some type of number in place. Another thing was actually throwing out a range. And I know this can be a sticky area for some people because some people, you know, they're quick to throw out a range. Not to say that's bad, but I know as I recruit, I do ask for a range because I want to make sure that I'm not wasting my time with this person. What I mean by that, if they're making, you know, $20,000 or $30,000 more than you know, the top of the range that I'm recruiting for, you know, it's, you know, it would be kind of unrealistic for them to take a $30,000 pay cut to work at this company. And if they do, that's when other questions get asked of why. You know, what's going on with your current job that you're willing to take this much of a pay cut? So that's when you want to make sure you're not wasting a candidate's time by having them go through a whole recruiting process and a hiring process just to find out that, hey, the most this company's going to pay is $50,000 and you're already making $80,000. You know, so that's one reason why I do ask for a range. But if you do give a range, make sure that you are going to live by that range, and don't be surprised if they actually go for the lower end. So make sure that low end that you said you actually would take. Because there's some people out there that give a very large range. I'll take anywhere from 50 to 80. 50 to 80 is a very large range right there, 50 to 80. And if someone pitches you 55, are you really going to take it? It's in your range. So you want to make sure if you are going to pitch a range, is it a range that you actually are going to stick to if they do pitch you a number at the lower end? Okay, and I think that's about with that question, and I hope I was able to answer that. Next question. This was actually a slide from my last session. I threw it in here because it was actually related to the question that was asked today. It pretty much piggybacked off of last week's question, which was about the best day to network. That was the question that was asked this week. The next slide goes into that. The question that was asked last week was, when was the best day to apply for jobs or reach out to an employer directly? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I covered it last week, and you can listen to the recording if you want to hear the in-depth version of what I said. But basically, just to touch base on what the best and worst days are, it was a research that was done. The best day was considered Monday. They said 30% of candidates who applied for jobs on Monday made it through to the next round of the hiring process. And they said the worst day actually was Saturday. They said Saturday turns out to be the worst day to apply for a job. They said with only 14% of success rate for candidates, but they also said it's fortunate that only 5% of people apply for jobs on Saturday. I actually thought it was higher. I thought that people may have used the weekend to apply for jobs, especially if they were working during the week. So this was some research that kind of also took me for a loop, because I actually thought that Saturday would have higher than 5% of applicants applying on that day. Well, that's just me, because I would think that I would use that day to apply for jobs the weekend. Monday, the reason why they said Monday was the best day is because this is the first thing that they see. You know, if you email them, that most recent email is the first thing that pops up on their inbox. So that's why they said your chances were a little bit better than someone that may have applied, over the weekend, where their email may be, in the middle of hundreds of other emails of people that may have emailed throughout the week and over the weekend. So that's why they said Monday was actually the best day. And you can look at the other days as well. Tuesdays was best were also best for job seekers who applied on Tuesday. This only had about a 20% success rate. Wednesdays and Thursdays was the best time for recruiters. They found that recruiters were the busiest on Wednesdays and Thursdays, looking and also extracting resumes online. They said that 40% of CVs were either downloaded, or CV searches or resume searches were carried out on Wednesdays and Thursdays. They said Friday was actually the best day to grab a recruiter's attention. They said it's less competition, and I could see why, because Friday you're ready for the weekend. You're not really online or trying to apply for jobs on Friday. You're kind of either ready to get out the office, or you're getting ready for your weekend to get started if you're currently not working. So I could see why Friday was the best day to get a recruiter's attention, because your competition is pretty low. If you want to hear the full-fledged review on this, you can listen to last week's session. I go a little bit in depth with the survey that they gave us, and I touched on some points on why these days were better than others, and actually my view on which days I thought were the best. So check out last week's workshop if you want to hear the full-fledged version of this. But I wanted to touch on today's question was the best day to network. And honestly, there were no surveys out there that told me what days were the best. There wasn't really any work research, and I can tell you why. Because networking is subjective to the person or the host that's throwing the networking event. So there's really not a special day of the week in which a networking event occurs. But I tell people, when it's time to network, be selective, because there's so much out there to network. And myself have been a victim of going to a network event that has been has just been a waste of time. So you want to make sure that you're selective. Be careful of free events. Many may waste your time if you're trying to network with some type of specific goal in mind. You want to make sure that you're attending events and actually researching events. And again, this is a little bit work on your part, but you want to make sure that you're actually looking for events that are going to bring you closer to your goal. My top 10, or should I say, which is on my top 10 list of networking events, would be association meetings, which are usually free for non-members. I think you can attend up to 2 or 3 meetings free. Why I like association or organizational meetings, because they are industry specific. You know what you're going to get when you walk in there. You can walk into an AMA meeting, which is American Marketing Association meeting, and you're going to see nothing but marketing professionals. From the marketing customer service person all the way up to the VP of marketing. It's all levels of marketing in there, and there's all levels of decision makers in those groups as well. That's why I like association meetings. Another one are conferences. You're going to find a lot of decision makers at conferences. The free events really aren't targeted towards decision makers. Many decision makers are very busy. What I mean by busy, they don't have time to network at the after 5, let's get a drink networking event. Many of them are, have very busy schedules. And most of the time you're going to find decision makers, either speaking at these events, they're either going to be sponsoring these events or hosting these events. They're in those 3 capacities. I'm not saying you never, because you never want to say never, but when you go to some of these free events, you rarely see, the VP of XYZ there, or the COO of this corporation. They don't attend those type of events, so it's almost fits into the cliche is you pay for what you get, you pay for what you get. So, the free events, I've had people that say that I go to career events and they walk into the room and it's packed, but it's packed with nothing but job seekers. You're looking for a job, I'm looking for a job. How does that bring you closer to your goal if you both are out of work and looking for jobs? You want to make sure that you're going to an event that's going to connect you with someone that actually can say, hey, shoot me your resume over. I work for XYZ. I can shoot it up to the hiring manager. But if you're attending events where everyone's out of work, how do you leverage that? How do you leverage and market yourself to other people that are also looking for work as well? So that's why I say be very selective. The next thing, you want to know your audience. Say you do decide to go to an association or a conference. You want to make sure you know who's there, what industry that you're targeting. Again, you're going to have to do some research. You want to know who's going to be in attendance, and sometimes some of these sign-ups even let you know who signed up. But if you don't know who signed up, at least you know the type of crowd that you would be in the presence of. So you definitely want to make sure, what you're going to be marketing to, or who you're going to be marketing to, and what you can bring to the table and what type of audience you're actually going to be approaching. This is going to give you, leverage when you go into those situations, because you kind of already have an idea who's going to be there. The next thing is you want to listen to understand. When you enter these networking events, many listen to respond and not to understand. You want to listen to understand and not to respond. Networking is a two-way street. It's not always about getting your 30-second, elevator speech in. Sometimes it's about listening and observing. Some people walk in there just to observe the room, who people talk to. I've been doing this for so long, I can actually go into a room and I can tell you who the decision makers are. Why? Because people gravitate towards them. The people that are, I can go to an event and don't know who's hosting or who the speakers are, but I can tell you who they are by how many people gravitate towards those type of people in the room. So you also need to make sure that you're observing who you're networking with, you're taking time to know the audience, and you're listening to understand. And another reason why I say this, when you start to network with someone, you want to shift your focus from what you can get, and you want to focus on what you can give. And when you do that, something powerful happens when you do this. When you focus on what can I give to this person versus what's in it for me, you become an asset. And that's what you want to become in any type of networking situation. You want to become that connector. Honest, minus the fancy titles of what I am, either a recruiter, director of recruiting, headhunter, minus all that, at the end of the day, I'm a connector. Recruiters connect people with other people that can possibly present them with an opportunity. You can be a connector when you go out there and network. You can introduce them to other people that can help them out. But the only way that you can do that goes back to my third point. You have to listen. And most people, when they talk about themselves or talk about their company, they'll drop little hints in there that many people won't think it's hits. They just think, oh, okay. Because I've actually heard conversations where they talked about, hey, I've been very busy. So how's your week been? I've been very busy. We're rolling out a new blah, blah, blah. And I ask them more about what product or service that you're rolling out that has you in the office so long. Well, they'll start telling me about their service or product. And when I hear about their rolling out services or product and they tell me the volume that they're trying to do, that lets me know, well, are you guys looking to bring more people on board? So I just start to probe for problems. Oh, you know what? You're in marketing, right? You're marketing. I know 2 or 3 marketing people I can send over to you. What's your email? You have a business card. Now I have shifted. Hey, what can I get out this person to somebody that's now an asset, because I'm going to potentially email this person a solution. In fact, instead of me emailing them a candid, hey, my name is Bridget Bagg and I met you at a networking event, now they're waiting for my email because now I'm sending them a solution. They're looking for me to email them. You see how I changed that up? Because think about it, how many networking events that you get that candid, hey, I met you at so-and-so and so. You know, everybody sends those emails. But then when you're sending something that actually is going to solve a problem, you get an actual response. You get a call to action, and that brings me up to follow-up. Regardless of what you're doing, you want to make sure that you're having a follow-up. And this is the piece that many people leave out in their networking equation. You know, instead of making it a business card collecting contest, you want to make sure that you're following up and you're confirming some call of action. When I say call of action, I'm not saying it has to be a long, drawn-out, 5-star fancy dinner. It can be a phone call. It can be an email. It can be coffee. No, it could be anything that requires their attention. That's what a call of action is. So me telling them I will send them over people or send them over 2 or 3 people I know that's out of work that they actually can help them with their service. Now I have got a call of action because now they got an email from me. After they send an email, we're now engaging into a conversation. They're going to eventually send me, you know, hey, those people were good, the people that you sent me over, or hey, these people aren't going to work out, or they may even consider, do you have 2 or 3 more other people that you can send to me? So now I'm just not that person they met at a networking event. Now I have become not only a connector, but I've become an asset to their company. So that's your whole objective when you network. And the reason why I say this is not objective when you network, because who you know and the people that you connect with determines how long your search lasts. Believe it or not, and it goes back to who you know. So this is something that you should be doing regardless if you're looking for a job or not. This is something that you should be incorporating in your professional life. Because I can tell you the way the economy is going, those 30-year jobs are out the window. People working 30 or 40 years at a job and retire is unheard of now. You're going to have to be using this more and more as you weave through this, the workforce, because many people aren't keeping jobs that long anymore. The next question I received was, is there a good template to help track job applications, resumes, edits for specific jobs? If you're like most people, and you know, if you have Word or Windows or whatnot, you know, you can use the old-fashioned Excel. But if you want a way to automate your process, I'm going to give you some great recommendations that are actually going to keep track of your contacts, your applications, and the professionals that you network with. Again, this should be something that you do regardless if you're on the job market or not. Again, your network is going to determine, and it definitely plays a role in the length of your job search. I'm seeing more people get on board or get onboarded by organizations off of referrals alone, off of who you know. So you definitely want to make sure this is something that's in your process. My favorite quote that I've learned in business is, you can't change what you don't measure. So if you're out there just doing it and don't know what you're doing, you may be spending a lot of time doing something that doesn't matter or doesn't generate results. So you want to make sure that you're tracking your efforts. I recommend that you use some type of CRM. If you don't know what CRM stands for, that's a customer relationship management system. In many words, this is what businesses use. If you guys if I threw out Salesforce, it'll ring a bell. That's what, you know, Salesforce is pretty much a leader in CRM, that you track your contacts. But the thing is, this is something that you can utilize in your job search. When I say use one with a mobile app, you know why? When you use a mobile app, it allows you, the mobile app will allow you to take a picture. I know everybody out here has these Android or smartphones. So you could take a picture of a contact's business card. It will automatically scan it into your CRM along with the notes that you put in there. Isn't that a super way that when you go to workshops or even after workshops, instead of you trying to type in stuff into an Excel spreadsheet, you just scan it and then it exports it to your database. You know, and then with the contacts you have in there, you can create a follow-up campaign, which means that it automatically sends them a post-event note. Beautiful way. I've done this. It's beautiful. It's a great way to keep track of everything and have that first contact with people that you met. The next one is download Evernote. They have it in an app version. They used to call this what are called card munch, and I don't know if you guys kept track with the follow LinkedIn and what their doings are. That used to be LinkedIn's app of choice, or their actual app they use for business cards. They got rid of it. They now have partnered up with Evernote. Card Crunch no longer is I want to say compatible or linked or associated or affiliated with LinkedIn. What this is, you download it, you can actually scan your business cards, and it sends the people's cards that you scanned a LinkedIn request. So if they're on LinkedIn, it will scan their card, you know, because most people's cards have their name, the company they work for, their phone number, their email. So it scans all that and it shoots it to LinkedIn, and LinkedIn, of course, does this filter. It finds the person and it sends out a LinkedIn request to them. So you're automatically linking up to this person when you scan their business card in Evernote. The next thing you should sign up for is Jibberjobber. Look it up, jibberjobber.com. If you haven't heard of it, it's a great source to use. What Jibberjobber is, it will help you find jobs, network, and track your companies. Once again, you cannot change what you don't measure. Stop applying to the same company you haven't heard from back, or you haven't heard back from. I get my words all backwards. So this is a great way to track the companies that you apply to. What they do offer on here, they have a wealth of videos, a library of information from previous job search or job seekers. They'll give you techniques on applying to jobs, people that actually apply to them. So this is just not people pulling, you know, advice out the air. These are actual job seekers that have been through the recruiting or interviewing process. Jibberjobber also allows you to track the information in your job search, which means that it tracks the companies that you apply to. You can create a target company list, which means that you can you can create a list of companies that you just want to target. It would keep track of any postings that they have in your field. Next one, it will actually track each job that you apply for. It will log you the status of each application that you apply for. And it also keeps track of different resumes. So we all know that you may not use the exact same resume for every single job. Jibberjobber knows that. They will track and document the resumes that you send to each company you apply to. So if a company calls you and say, I'm XYZ Corporation, you can log in and say, oh, that's the resume I sent to XYZ Corporation. So that way when they start asking you questions, you're following along on the exact same resume. Next thing I recommend that you do is Google free CRMs. Keep in mind, Jibberjobber is free. They do have premium options or premium plans, which means you can upgrade and you can pay for it for, I guess, you know, for added features that you may want. But if you just want the basic job seeker account, it's absolutely no cost. Evernote doesn't cost a thing. I think Jibberjobber actually has an app too, so that goes with the mobile app feature I have for the first one. My last recommendation is if none of these meet your needs or for whatever reason that like I said, Jibber Jabber is free, but say you don't want it, or there are other options that you do have to pay for. You can Google either free CRMs or open source CRMs, software solutions. They would give you, and I've looked it up, they would give you either a list of the top 10 best free ones, because we all know free doesn't mean good. So you want to definitely go by the ratings to make sure that you're not going to download and try to use crappy software. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. So I will actually Google the top 10 or the best free ones, so that way you can actually get one that you're going to use that's not too complicated and not too buggy, because a lot of them may have bugs in them. The free ones may. So of course, if you're buying the paid one, I see some as cheap as $5 or $6 a month, and I see them high as $30 or $40 a month. Depending on your budget, you may be out of work and say, hey, I don't have $30 or $40 to spend. Get Jibber Jabber, it's free. And I have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to open up the line. These are the questions that you have to ask. This is open discussion. Please type any questions in your text box or raise your hand, and I will unmute your mic. If anyone asked a question that they want elaborated on, maybe I didn't answer it to your expectations or to the answer that you wanted, we definitely can talk about it, and I can give you a better answer. So if there's any questions you have, please type them in, and I will be more than happy to answer those. While we're waiting for any questions that need to be answered, this is my contact information. If you want to talk to me one-on-one about a specific question or problem that you may be encountering, you can go to the website, career-innovate.com. On the home page, there's book an appointment. You can actually schedule an appointment online through my online scheduling, and that way we can set up a time to talk. Best way to reach me is through email, my first initial last name at career-innovate. I'm rarely in the office sitting behind a desk. I'm usually always working or at a meeting or somewhere, so the best way is to shoot me an email. I'll probably answer your email before I listen to the voicemail. So that's another best way to reach me as well. Upcoming workshops we'll be having. We're going to be putting together some on-demand workshops, which means that I still do the Q&A sessions, because like I said, this is a source that or a resource I give candidates that I'm unable to place. I get a lot of people that send their resume that I'm unable to place because I may not have a position, or I may be working for a company that does not need that particular experience. So I offer some type of resource to at least help them help themselves. So this is what this is. I'm also going to be offering on-demand videos. I've had at the end of this workshop, you're going to get a survey. Please take the survey. That lets me know how to better my best, what things we can improve, what questions you'll like to see. And the reason why I'm making these on-demand videos is because I actually had someone in the survey that answered the question about what they like to see. They had specific workshops they wanted me to do. They thought I was a great presenter. I was pretty blunt and upfront and honest about things, and they wanted me to put together some workshops that they could view at their time, because sometimes they're not able to jump on live. I said, great idea. So I'm actually putting together some on-demand workshops, which will be loaded on the website, and you can look at them how many times you want, and and all that good stuff, and they'll be actually topic specific. So I'll be doing that in the near future as well. I get a lot of thank yous. You're welcome. Glad I was able to answer your question. I do have a question that came through. Do you have any networking tips for shy people? Networking tips for shy people. Well, I would tell you, it's hard to network when you don't know. And I had this problem before. When you first start out, you don't know one in the room. It's very hard to approach people. You also have to realize, and this is what I had to realize in business, don't be intimidated. Most people, I find, that shy because either they're intimidated, or they just don't like to network, or they're just it's out of their comfort zone. They're comfortable networking and speaking with people that they know. But at once upon a time, unless it's family, your friends or anyone else, they were once strangers. So you also have to look at, hey, how can I build a relationship with people I don't know? So if you're shy, I would start practicing. How would you approach people in a room that you may not know anyone? You could do this with friends. You can do this with family members. And while you're doing this, you need to also keep in your mind and repeating to yourself that these people that you're speaking with are no different from you. You know, even though they may be in a higher, be in a high-powered position, at one time they were a job seeker. At one time they were unemployed. You know, so you also want to make sure that you understand, hey, they get up and put their pants on the same way you do. So don't feel any type of way or feel any type of intimidation by trying to approach someone if you're shy. Also, make sure that you're networking with a purpose. So if you are networking with people with like minds, you will feel comfortable in that setting. You know, I wouldn't advise you to go to something that, again, may not be in your target or if you're networking, but if you also want to network with people that have like interests, start out with meetups. Meetup.com is a great place to start just to get the networking down. You know, these may not be networking events that are focused on career, but it may be a way for you to break out of being shy. It may get you that exposure you need to network with people you don't know. You know, there are lots of groups that you can join by interest level. You know, so you can join a group with, you know, people that are all interested in one thing. You'll probably feel a little bit more comfortable because now you're networking with people that have a like interest. You know, sometimes that can also alleviate any type of anxiety you have when you network. But I definitely would practice. You know, networking is an art. I truly believe that. It's people that can walk into a room and work it, and it does, you know, and some people comes naturally with, and some people, you know, it took years of experience to get that down. So it is an art that you will have to practice on. Definitely practice in small groups. I'm not the type of person to tell you not to or avoid networking. You know, like I said, this day and age, this is almost a requirement to get out there, because I'm seeing more people are really weighing on, you know, who you know. And I'm pretty sure you know this by if you worked with people that had a position, you probably think, how the heck they get that job? I know I have. I've been in corporate America and seen some high-powered people that don't know an egg from a skillet. That, you know, they the director or they the VP, and you think, you know, I got more experience than them. Well, you know what? He knew somebody that got him in the door. That's why he has that position, or that's why she has that position. You know, so I'm seeing more and more. It's really starting to be based on who you know. So I think networking is something that you can practice. Also, look at the Toastmasters. You know, that's a great way to network. It also helps you with articulating your words, getting your point across, you know, being able to deliver speeches. Is a great way to network with people that do have problems speaking in crowds or public speaking. Look up a Toastmasters in your area, you know, and join them. And these are small groups. You know, if you get in a small group, a Toastmaster that has a small chapter, you know, that's a great way to break the ice. They have different chapters. Some are huge, but they also have, you know, depending on what area you live in, they also have small chapters that you can join. And that's all they do is public speaking. They work on being able to put together speeches. They also work on being able to deliver in like you say, in a small group. They teach you how to network. And mind you, you're with other people that also have this issue as well. They may be shy. You know, you also have people that may not deliver. English may not be their first language, so that their delivery may not be as strong. So they're trying to practice on being able to deliver their words a little bit better. So you have all types of different type of people in those groups. Most of the very well-known speakers are members of the Toastmasters, and they've gotten a lot of their teachings and methodology from Toastmasters. So I definitely would check that out as well. So I hope I was able to answer your question. And again, after the workshop, please log off and take the survey. I would love to read your feedback. And we do this every Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. If you have any questions, I hope to see you next Monday. Shoot me an email or book an appointment. We'll talk soon. Have a great night. Thank you for joining us.